Hi, Rustico. I've got 3:30 on our clock here. Are we ready to begin?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're good to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Development Permit Panel meeting of Wednesday, January 25th, 2025. On the panel today, we have myself, Wayne Craig, General Manager of Planning and Development, Roland Zwag, General Manager, Engineering and Public Works, and Marie Fenwick, Director, Arts and Culture. We also have a number of staff with us today from the Development Applications Department, Josh Reese, Cynthia Lucier, Babek Bahina, and Suzanne Smith. The panel deals with items of form and character, things such as architecture, landscaping, exterior lighting, etc. The panel does not deal with land use matters, as those are established through the zoning process, which is a city council process. In terms of the order of business for the panel, we will, after each item is introduced, there will be a presentation from the applicant. There will be an opportunity for some staff comments on the applicant, an opportunity for members of the panel to ask any questions of city staff and or the applicant. There will be an opportunity for any members of the public to ask questions related to the application. We will read any public correspondence into the record, and then the panel will deliberate and provide a recommendation on the application. The application would then proceed to City Council for their consideration once any conditions have been met. It is of note that today is the primary opportunity for any member of the public wishing to provide comment on this application to provide such comments, as these applications are generally not delegable when they are proceeding to Council for consideration. In terms of today's agenda, the first item on our agenda is a motion to adopt the minutes of the Development Permit Panel meeting held on December 11th of 2024. That is moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. The first item on the scheduled agenda today was a development permit 18842750. The applicant was the Richmond Auto Mall Holdings Limited for the Auto Mall property. That item has been removed from today's agenda and will be considered at a future meeting of the Development Permit Panel with appropriate notification as is typically required. So apologies to any members of the public that may be here to hear about that item today, but it will be considered at a future meeting of the panel. With that, our next item on the agenda is Development Permit 21-944022. The applicant is Coast Construction. The property location is 18840 River Road. And the recommendation before the panel is that a development permit be issued to permit the construction of a single-family dwelling at 18840 River Road on a site zoned agricultural AG1 and designated as an environmentally sensitive area. With that, I'll ask for a presentation from the applicant. If you could please turn on your camera, share your screen, introduce yourself, and provide your address. Thank you.
I just want to do a microphone check. Yeah. My name is Cesar Villanueva from ATA Architectural Design. We have members of our team, principal architect, project manager, and environmental engineer in the call as well. Let me just share my screen. So this application is for a proposal for lavender farm on a site that is located on 18840 River Road. And
Sorry, Cesar, if I could interrupt, are you able to maximize your screen so that we're just seeing the slide? Thank you.
Is that better? Great.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. So the proposed farm home plate is located on the north east corner of the lot. It's well behind the 15-meter riparian setback. There's a barn along the west side. The main farming area will be done on the middle section of the lot. And there's also a enhanced wildlife area at the back that we plan to preserve. The only access to the site is along River Road. We're utilizing the existing driveway along the front. As you know, this site will be affected by the future construction of the dike along River Road. So we've had to move the farm home plate 21.4 meter away from the front line. This will allow for 7.5 meter dike service and a 13.9 meter wide dike. The current flood construction level is at 3.5 meter, which is being elevated to match the proposed height of the future dike at 4.7 meters. The farm home plate shown here in red will be the host for a two-car open carport with level 2 electric vehicle charging station. Adjacent to the carport is the septic tank. A single-family 3-bedroom farmhouse with 1-bedroom secondary suite will be the main house for the farm workers. The farmhouse proposed GFA is just a little less than 10,000 square feet. It is way below the permitted GFA of 60,000 square feet. The farmhouse is 2-story, 8.17 meter in height, and the carport is a single-story, 3.41 meter in height. The main driveway access to the site is in the shaded area shown here. We've allowed for area so car can drive through to enter the back area. The proposed barn is situated along the west side towards the front, avoiding the sensitive ecosystem shown here in green. The barn area will basically be used for production and processing of lavender farms, and it will also be used for parking of machineries. Garbage enclosure will be attached to the north end of the barn, and the proposed height of the barn is 8.9 meters. The building design is basically slim, narrow, and rectangular. We've basically created a view corridor overlooking a scenic lavender farm. Once the dike is elevated, this is the farmhouse, and here's the view of here's a view corridor between the farmhouse and the carport, and a wider view between the farm home plate and the barn. This is basically the proposed overall site area, the farm home plate, the barn on the west side. Main farming area will be in the middle section, and the enhanced wildlife that we're preserving is at the back. Our environmental assessment of this site concluded that lavender farming is the most optimum choice for farming, since it's not suitable for basically broad selection of crops. The area at the back is the least suitable for farming due to lower elevation of soil condition, being wet and unproductive. It would basically be much more costly to bring to farming and restoring it ecologically to as basically the best option. We also have now Daniel McAllister, the environmental engineer, that will say a few words on the environmental topic. I will pass this on to Dan McAllister.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. If you could bring up that last screen again. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah, just speaking to the environmental sensitivities of the site. Most of the area on Richmond's city mapping is classified as an ESA under the wetland category. However, the site has been subject to 1.5 to 3 meters of fill, which is at some point in the past. We don't really know when that happened, but it was there when the purchase was made, with very unproductive, impermeable fill, which has actually raised the site quite a bit. And so when you're looking at where the lavender farm is right there, that whole area is reed canary grass. And the plan is to remove that and get rid of it and then restore the site using raised beds to plant the lavender. At the very back of the property, that is actually the area that did not receive fill. So any areas of the property that did not receive fill, we are retaining as the ESA. So that represents the ESA as it would have been if there was no fill on the property. With respect to the other environmental values, we did a comprehensive baseline inventory of the site, looked at bats, birds, mammals, that kind of stuff. And the area that does provide habitat is that back end of the property. So that's going to be the area. It's called the compensation site because it's technically compensating for the loss of the ESA where the lavender farm and the structures are. But currently, as that property sits, there is no viable ESA on that site. It's just a fill site, really. And that's all I really have to say. If there's any questions.
Sorry, perhaps just to help address this, if you could speak to the type of planting which will be added to that compensation area or restoration area?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pull it up here. So for coniferous trees, we'll be removing the invasive plants first of all. So that's an important part of the compensation, is that nothing's going to really work unless we get rid of that reed canary grass, which, if you're all familiar with it, it's a highly aggressive invasive plant. It's natural, but it is highly aggressive and invasive in these situations. Under coniferous trees, we're going to be looking at western red cedar, Sitka spruce, and lodgepole pine, and those will be planted in the appropriate moisture conditions because those represent different moisture regimes. For deciduous trees, we'll be looking at black cottonwood and red alder. For grasses, in areas that would be subject to grasses, we're going to be looking at bluegrass and shrubs, elderberry, and yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah, Yeah, I'm just looking through the plan to see if there's anything else worth mentioning. On the revegetation side of things, plants will be sourced from a reputable nursery. We like to use Nat's Nursery out in Langley. To promote biodiversity, a minimum of 50% of the trees and shrubs will be fruit-bearing, and another 10 to 25% will be conifers. To maximize the survival rates, plants will be installed in the fall to allow them to establish before the summer drought, and then they will be monitored to ensure survival. Trees will be planted at a density of 5 meters, triangular spacing, and other plants at a density of 1 meter. Plant nursery tags will be retained to ease identification. Mulch will be added to the surface at the time of planting to retain moisture, and a QEP will supervise the planting to ensure the plants are installed and spaced appropriately. And if possible, we will retain any existing native tree species. The tree species that are on that property now are put there as a result of what appears to be an attempt to establish a nursery on the site, but it didn't look like it went that well because they're all growing weird. They look like Dr. Seuss trees.
Thank you. If you could stop sharing screen. Josh, any staff comments on this application?
A couple of comments, Mr. Chair. So the farm home plate for this project has been set back from River Road in order to accommodate future diking infrastructure. The applicant has proposed an area of just over 3,700 square meters at the south end of the site, as they indicated, for environmental enhancement and compensation in consideration of the single-family building. This area is to be planted with a mixture of native shrubs and trees. No enhancements are proposed within the RMA area along River Road, as this setback area, as I indicated earlier, would be used for future diking improvements. So no enhancements are proposed within that area at this time. None of the agricultural uses, the planting of the lavender and the barn structure, are part of this approval. It is solely limited to the encroachment of the residential use. And no improvements or changes are proposed to the area that is located to the southwest of the site. The site is a hooked parcel. There is a part on the south side of the railway. It is also not included nor in this application in terms of any enhancements or improvements or disturbances occurring within that area. That concludes staff comments.
Thank you. Marie Rowland, any questions for staff or the applicant?
Go ahead, Marie, if you want to go first.
Sure. You spoke a bit about the work that you're doing on the back of the property. I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit about the landscaping that's planned for around the residence.
Is that addressed to Dan?
Who's ever better suited to speak to that?
Yeah, maybe Cesar, are you better suited to that? That's more like landscaping than compensation.
So the landscaping around the barn is basically for now we're just putting gravel around there. So it's basically going to be the main access to service the barn, and the back area is basically going to be covered by farming and wild habitat. And again, we can't really touch the front either because we don't know what's going to happen with the future construction of the diking. There is some small landscaping in front of the building, possibly some shrubs, but very small to even really discuss.
Yeah, there might be an opportunity there to add more native plants to kind of contribute to the maintaining the natural habitat in the area, just a comment. And also I noticed that residents will be located between two existing properties, and I just am curious if there's been some consideration to lighting and lighting design to prevent light bleed into the neighboring properties.
There won't be any lighting design per se around the lot. There will be some lighting within the carport, possibly around around the house, but it's going to be facing the carport, so it won't be facing the east side of the property, and the west side is quite far from the west neighbor. Lighting for the barn will be facing the east also, so it will be away from the neighboring west side.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. Just, I got to ask maybe a follow-up question on the driveway just to make sure I was understanding it clearly. I was looking at the attachments for the presentation, and it shows that you were using the existing driveway off River Road. And then based on some of the drawings and attachment, it's made out of some limestone, but I see it stopping right at the proposed farmhouse. But I think you mentioned in the presentation, and perhaps we need a clarification, does that permeable driveway extend all the way to the south towards a farm operation? Or is there like a secondary driveway planned for the actual farm operation?
No, it does not. It basically ends at the carport, and the rest will be gravel.
You're going to continue south with a gravel driveway in the future as part of the farm operations?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. And then with respect to, I guess you're going to have to fill the site to some extent. Could you maybe provide some information on your process to procure, good clean fill, sourcing that, and perhaps talk a bit about the ALC process as far as permits required?
This is probably going to be a gray area because, as you know, there's a maximum fill that is allowable in the ALC regulation. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen between the future construction of the diking. Because if we have to raise the front border of the lot, it will basically affect the fill area that is allowed in the regulations. So we're not quite sure how this process is going to go. It's probably going to be involved the City of Richmond and ALR to figure out whether we need to change the bylaw.
Sorry, could you clarify that, Cesar? So I believe you're looking at a notice of intent related to the fill. Are you suggesting that at this point in time you're unsure whether there may actually be something further than a notice of intent required?
Well, the only regulation that we need to meet basically is the raising of the farm bed for lavender farm. So if that's the case, then we should meet the requirements of the ALC. But if they view us raising the diking area to 4.7 meter, the question is, will that be included in the maximum fill area that is allowed in this lot?
Oh, okay. So if I understand correctly, the issue is whether fill associated with the driveway through the RMA will require an application to the ALC because it may tip over the notice of intent limitations.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Roland, did you have any further questions?
No, Mr. Chair, those are all my questions I had today. Thank you.
All right. I do have a couple questions myself. So I just wanted, perhaps this is a point of clarification, Cesar. During your presentation, you mentioned septic tank. I want to just confirm that there is a septic field being provided on the site within the foam harm plate and not just a septic tank.
All right. It will be adjacent to the carport.
Thank you. And then perhaps Daniel, if you could provide a high-level commentary with respect to the compensation area and the anticipated ecological function of that area, and more specifically, the gain or net gain in ecological function as a result of the improvements provided.
Yeah, absolutely. Currently on the site, there's very little ecological function. We have almost all the plants that are on the site on the front 3/4 of the site are invasive plants, and they do provide ecological functions. Like blackberries provide pretty good habitat for birds, but it's not generally acknowledged as the best plant to have on your site. So the plan is to remove all of those and reestablish the natural system on the back with the plantings that we discussed earlier. We're going to be looking at enhancing wildlife features. So this will be used by establishing native plant communities, installing nesting and roosting habitat for birds and bats, and providing forest woody debris and clean water sources, which promote habitat for things like amphibians. We're going to provide roosting and nesting habitat. There are hoary and silver-haired bats that use the site. We got quite a few hits on when we put up the bat detectors for 28 days. They're quite common in the area, and so we're going to be promoting bat habitat because it's usually most effective rather than trying to attract new species into the area because they have a very quite limited range when they're engaging in food foraging activities. Just to enhance the ones that they're already using. And so to that end, we're going to be putting up bat boxes. We're going to be retaining any trees that are in that compensation area that are suitable. You know, if they're an invasive tree, we'll be taking it out, but a suitable tree will be retaining that. And yeah, that's mostly what we're targeting is amphibians, bats, and birds. And so it will raise the ecological, just by removing the reed canary grass, you're going to be raising the ecological function quite a bit.
Thank you for that. Any further questions before we move on to any members of the public who wish to comment? Marie, Roland? All right, Rustico, do we have any members of the public or written correspondence with respect to this application?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's no correspondence for this item, but there's a member of the public who wish to speak on this item.
Okay, if you could ask them to come down and introduce themselves, provide their name and address, and provide any questions they may wish to have answered.
Good afternoon, and thank you for hearing any comments or concerns we may have. My name is Michaela Lynn. I am the tenant at 18740 River Road. I've lived there for about 20 years. And the questions that I had regarding the new lavender farm were, is there any plan to mitigate the smell of production if there's distilling of lavender going on the property?
Perhaps we could get a list of all your questions and then we can ask the applicant to address. So is there anything further than that question, or is that?
Also, the applicant mentioned trucks. I was just wondering what size of trucks and the number of trucks we were talking about. And the gravel driveway that will be going further back into the property past the main farmhouse driveway, what side of the property will that be on?
All right, thank you for those questions. Cesar, are you able to please address the comment with respect to odor management or any odor controls related to the processing of the lavender, the farm access driveway, and how far it may extend and where it may be located, and then also trucks anticipated as a result of the farm operation?
So most of the processing for lavender will be done inside the barn. The barn will most likely going to be airtight, so I doubt that, you know, if there's going to be odor coming up of the lavender, it will be very minimal. The main driveway is basically where the existing driveway there now, and if I doubt that there will be a big truck per se that is going to be accessing the site. It's quite a small farming area. It will probably be more of a van, and the access to the middle section is basically between the farmhouse and the carport through the farm home plate, and it just basically ramps down to the barn area. I'm not sure which one is 18740.
It's the site
In
to the
relation
west.
to, is it on the west side?
I'm on the
It's the
west
west.
side, yeah. So I'm quite a
On
bit
the west
lower than
side,
the
yeah.
property in question, so that was my concern.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cesar, maybe if you could share your screen again with the site plan and just show where the driveway may extend. I believe what you've indicated is that the driveway providing farm access will be between the proposed house and carport. It would go then to the barn, but is not anticipated to extend beyond the barn. Is that correct?
Right, yeah. So the main middle central section of the lot is basically for farming. The existing driveways where this shaded area is right now, this is where the carport is, farmhouse, west side. If there's any access to the back area, it will be through this road. The barn will basically eclipse any of the van that will go through and access the site. And there's no areas we provided for any trucks to go through the farm area. So it will basically stop somewhere in here.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, does that answer your questions?
It certainly does, thank you.
All right. If there are no other delegations on this item, I believe that does bring us to panel deliberation. If I could kick this off, I really appreciate the compensation measures that are being proposed as part of this application. I appreciate the efforts that are being made to focus that compensation in areas which are providing some habitat function currently. Having said that, there are a couple of measures that I would like to suggest be further considered before this application is forwarded to council for consideration, and ask for the other panel members to consider these as part of any motion should we get to that. One would be that there be consideration given to extending native landscape, native planting within the farm home plate. And the second would be to work with city staff to try and clarify that the process to be followed with respect to fill permissions from the Agricultural Land Commission. I see panel members nodding. So with that, I'd be prepared to suggest that as direction, subject to any additional comments that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support those considerations for today.
Yeah, I do as well.
All right. With that, is somebody prepared to move the motion subject to that direction? Moved. Marie?
Seconded.
All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Your application has been endorsed by the panel subject to working with staff on those two items prior to the application being forwarded to council for their consideration. The next item on our agenda is any new business, Josh?
No new business, Mr. Chair. Our next scheduled meeting of the Development Permit Panel is January 29th. We do have an item scheduled for that agenda.
All right. With that, I think we're in order for a motion of adjournment. May I have such a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.